The story unfolds within the demon realm and the castle of the Demon King. This powerful ruler, whose name remains a mystery, sits atop his throne and praises the human who's approaching. He commands his subjects to eliminate the intruder, and as the demons rush forward, he activates magical circles. Bending down, he conjures guns from these circles, shooting down the demonic beasts one by one. Their heads explode into bits under the force of his shots. As the moon takes on a darker hue, he faces an unexpectedly large number of opponents. Undaunted, he swiftly moves towards them and begins a skillful bullet dance, halting the demons in their tracks. Amidst the chaos, a demon general lunges at him, only to meet a surprising fate, a bullet straight to its face. The Demon King watches in awe as his foe rises from his seat and wreaks havoc upon his realm. The human summons a scythe, surrounded by an ominous aura that blankets the sky. With a demon stone on his forehead, he delivers a quick and potent blow, narrowly avoided by the Demon King. The resulting explosion destroys the area behind them. The human quickly closes the distance, catching the enemy off guard. He lands a direct hit, but the Demon King's barrier neutralizes the attack. Unperturbed, the human conjures sinister orbs of aura and hurls them at his adversary. Though the opponent narrowly evades most, one orb connects, throwing him off balance and causing his guns to fall. Seizing the opportunity, the demon advances, conjuring a massive mana circle and firing with a rifle. The barrier formed by the demon stone starts to crack, and the enraged beast launches a barrage of aura blasts. These powerful attacks entangle the human, who begins to panic. Faced with seemingly no escape, he turns the tables and attacks back, aiming to defeat the demon before it consumes him. Determined to end the fierce battle, he fires a single overwhelming shot that breaches the demonic barrier. In response, the infuriated creature screeches insults, but it's too late. The human snatches up his fallen gun and stands triumphant as he blasts off the demon's head. As the remains of the defeated creature disperse, a clear notification appears on the screen, the conclusion of World Version 2's Magic Marksman world. The story transitions to a gaming scene where the player opts for a mage character in the third version of the game. However, to make things more interesting, he decides to utilize the karma system and embrace penalties to gain benefits. He selects traits such as insomnia, mana addiction, chronic headaches, and life-draining talent, traits that sound all too familiar. With a mix of penalties, he crafts the ultimate mage character, fully aware that it will start off weaker due to the chosen traits. Yet this doesn't concern him, as it's all just part of the game. His memories of the loading screen blur together, marked by a burst of black light that envelops him, leading to his unconsciousness. He was forced to wake by his supervisor, who punched at his bare face. As weird as it was, he had now become the weak character he had created. Having been sleeping during his work hours, he was beaten awake as the others watched after 3 days. He was ignored by the co-workers under the boss's orders. He worked until exhaustion and was fed a wasteful bowl of rice porridge. Due to his weakness, he was reasonably considered a dead man. As his supervisor approached him, he started coughing furiously. When they walked past him, he was optimistic, since his magic talent would be the same despite his physical weaknesses. To escape the place, he needed proper knowledge of the prison he was in. While unnoticed, he approached a secluded door and noticed light ahead. His supervisor and a co-worker conversed about how frustrating the endless work for a black mage was. He noticed as one of them fished out a vial of Viper, a drug that improved the consumer's vitality since it had mana in it. At the sight of the mysterious substance, a sharp blast of mana raged around him. A shock reverberated through his body, activating the third eye, an alter ego. He had finally recognized the fundamental element as it flew into him. It was a familiar sensation for him. It was his new world's mana. As the others slept, he recalled the upcoming visit of a superior when the security would be tighter. Using his magical proficiency, he applied the magic light to his forehead to create a proxy fever, determined to escape under the pretext of a dying man. Meanwhile, his supervisor and Van were coincidentally planning to dispose of him before their superior's arrival. The following day, while the men awoke to the blaring speakers, they noticed his feverish power. As the men spoke amongst each other, Van approached the wide-awake Lennox, who noticed him furnishing something from inside his jacket. He pulled at his shoulders as he spotted a vial of Viper in his hand. He handed it to him for the journey he had ahead of himself. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. What is the best type of magic? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now back to the recap. While he sat in the barren room, he felt the seething vitality within him, discovering the miraculous potion. His plans of escape had now changed. In the basement of the factory dock, the director noted a difference in the quantity of vipers. Lennox approached a desk worker, speaking of his errands in the lock director's office and requesting to unlock it. He followed him through the corridors, and as Mark unlocked the doors, he activated Lightning Magic Bolt and attacked him. He picked up the keys and initiated his search for Viper. He scavenged a gun, a few clothes, and soon enough, the Viper. While he planned to slowly consume the potions, a knock resounded on the door. Stepping into the room, the supervisor immediately caught a whiff of the distinctive scent of Viper. The smell seemed to hang in the air, a mixture of danger and intrigue. As he entered further, his eyes were drawn to Mark on the floor. However, it seemed that Lennox's power was not as potent as it appeared. He lacked the necessary mana, the magical energy, to carry out his intentions. This weakness in Lennox was a revelation to Aide, who had witnessed the unfolding scene with a growing sense of intrigue. Amidst the dialogue, a voice from outside filtered in, its words almost indistinguishable. The outside world seemed to blur, its existence distant and unimportant in the current moment. Aide's attention remained fixed on the unfolding drama before him. Aide's heart softened as Lennox's request for forgiveness hung in the air. There was a depth to Lennox's actions that Aide had not fully comprehended, and in response Aide offered an unexpected act of kindness. He gestured towards the door that led to the parking area, an invitation to escape. Lennox got into a car and began his daring escape when he met the person manning the barricade. Lennox's request for assistance hung in the air, a plea for salvation from an unforeseen threat. Beside the worker, a transmitter sat, its function disrupted. The malfunctioning device seemed to complicate matters further, as Aide deduced that sealing off the exit was the logical course of action. Lennox's explanation resonated, even as uncertainty clouded the scene. Lennox's words took on a more ominous tone as he voiced his concerns about being left behind. The threat he posed, if abandoned, was one that lingered in the minds of those present. As the tension mounted, the worker's voice rose above the turmoil, an attempt to reason and negotiate, but in an instant a shot rang out, erasing the man's words. The suddenness of the event was jarring, the outcome unexpected. Despite the chaos, one thing remained clear. Lennox's calculated demeanour, his rationality and composure, were tools that served him well in the face of adversity. And as the turmoil settled, a sense of clarity emerged. With a renewed focus, he turned his attention to the next obstacle, a gate that stood between him and the horizon. Determined and resolute, Lennox burst forward, breaking through the barrier that lay ahead. He arrived at the magic engineering city of Balkan and noticed the differences from the previous versions of the game. Everything around him had some mana in it, relaying how huge and vast the network of mana was. As he coughed in pain, he refrained from using the scarce Viper. He enters a hotel, having already disposed of the car, but with all the exhaustion he falls to the ground. He awakes in dire thirst and helps himself to some canned water. He pukes, feeling extremely queasy, probably due to the Viper side effects. He was forced by his weakness to rely on stimulants. As his stomach grumbles, he fetches some canned food from the refrigerator. The line on the table informs him of his debt of 120,000 sel. Note, sel is the currency. The prices were ridiculous for him, leaving him with 10,000 sel and urging him to earn more. He cleanses himself, certain his recognition would be doubtful. Legal jobs were a no-go, since he was a criminal human with no identity, and plans to seize money from criminals. He focuses his mind on his ears and on his surroundings. Soon enough he chances upon one. As he felt his weakness surging, he quickly consumed another Viper to ensure his monetary mission. A cat screeches as a guy is shoved into a dumpster by two others, demanding their share of his loot. On that very night he found himself at a mysterious bar that seemed to hide secrets behind its entrance. With a wave of his hand, he cast a spell that reshaped his face using magic. In this new world, trust was scarce, so he cautiously entered the bar and approached the bartender. He asked for a light drink and inquired about job opportunities suitable for mages. The bartender's glass rang out as he struck it, and from a door behind the bar emerged a lady named Jenny. She introduced herself while he went by the name Van. Jenny was curious about his magical abilities, mentioning that basic tricks wouldn't impress her, but before she could finish her sentence, he surprised her by summoning a ball of lightning, skipping the usual incantations and gestures. This display caught her attention, and she promptly presented him with a contract. His condition was to work without extensive human interactions, a demand that Jenny readily accepted. She offered a simple bounty hunter quest to track down a scavenger named Taylor Evans, who had tried to steal security equipment. The case was peculiar because Taylor was the sole survivor among the scavengers involved. Despite Achilles, the previous hunter's attempt, the task had been passed on, and the reward was set at 3 million cells. When he requested blood samples from the target, Jenny hesitated due to the expense of involving blood mages. Drawing from his expertise in the previous version of the game, he confidently cast a spell called Bloody Chase, using a magic circle and the sample. A serpent materialized and slithered away, tracing the path towards Taylor Evans. Following the trail, he encountered Taylor, standing draped in a red cloak, amidst the railroad tracks. Taylor panicked and tried to flee, but Lennox incapacitated him with a spell called Sound Wave. As Lennox moved closer, a sniper's bullet struck his protective shield, evidence that danger was nearby. He reinforced the barrier and attempted to track the sniper's location, but it was Taylor who diverted his focus. Determined not to lose his target, he aimed his gun and shot down the sniper. This act was calculated, designed to portray him as a ruthless and unrelenting hunter. The sniper's hesitation allowed Lennox to summon a lightning spell to his palm, further demonstrating his power. As the confusion grew, dark clouds gathered, and Lennox called upon the spell Thunder, unleashing a massive bolt that illuminated the surroundings. Taylor took advantage of the chaos to escape, leaving behind only a bag at the bar's entrance. Inside, evidence of Taylor's demise was presented, confirming the completion of the quest. The bartender verified the body and informed him of his reward, 270,000 cells after taxes. Emerging from the back door, Jenny praised his efficiency and inquired about his skills and talents. She agreed to trust him for more deals, but waiting was necessary because she had to report to Achilles. When Lennox left, the bartender shared results from surfing the scavenger network, while Jenny watched in awe. Lennox went to the Balkan Library to study magic and ways to extend his lifespan due to the draining karma system. Reading about mana theory, he realized his immense talent. As dusk neared, he discovered that the concept of mana he knew had been erased. Magic used to be split into powerful, unique magic and common magic, but now, common magic was gone, and time magic was a mystery. Disappointed, he heard a voice urging him to become a mage. He turned to see a blonde lady who explained how independent mages needed talent. She gave him her business card and left. He was amazed at her young professor status, considering his own exhaustion. Deciding to buy nutritious food, a cop's mana pattern check surprised him. He continued, and a girl at a stall asked if he had done something wrong. They talked, and she shared she was rich and grew vegetables as a hobby. She offered him onions for insomnia, and he requested onions and bell peppers. His unique mana pattern indicated he was new, and he walked away determined. He researched for days, wanting to improve with common magic, but he lacked clues on inherent magic and grew unwell. To access better drugs, he needed an identity. Talking to Jenny at the bar, he learned identities were costly. Business jobs paid better than bounty hunts. She mentioned Charlotte from the 42nd District studied anti-aging and cell revival in humans. Although there were stories about really harshly taking off someone's face, the big company didn't give up because they had government support. The new group that wanted something was a makeup company called Varitz. They had two things they wanted. First, they needed to hack into the company and get secret information. They said they'd pay $350 million for that. But if that was too hard, they'd give $50 million just to wreck the factory. The first thing was too tough to do for just $350 million. So, Lennox agreed to the second thing. Jenny was happy about that, and she introduced her partner for the job. Right when they were talking about it, a guy who tried to act like Deadpool came in. Jenny said his name was Dylan O'Casey. He was a cheap fighter and not that great. They all said hi and stuff, but Lennox wanted to know why they were working together. Dylan said he was fine working alone, but Jenny made him join. They talked about sharing the rewards. Jenny didn't say anything about Dylan before, so she agreed to share. Dylan talked to Jenny, and she got him down on the ground. She's strong. Jenny said she'd check out the factory's plans. The place they wanted to hit was in a good area, and Dylan said Jenny never gave up her share of money before. He gave Lennox a card for a job, but it was a secret from Jenny. Dylan wanted to fight and show off his skills. Going through his bag, he pulls out quite a peculiar mask. At first he doesn't want to use it, but Dylan keeps insisting, so he puts on the mask. It's a lot like the one Kakashi wears. The two friends, Dylan and Lennox, have a plan to get into the factory. Dylan's going to distract the guards, and Lennox will sneak in to plant the explosive. It sounds simple, but they're not sure how it will go. Dylan's a wild card, unpredictable. Dylan approaches the guards, whistling like it's no big deal. One of the guards turns around, surprised to see his buddy knocked out. Dylan's fast and sneaky, knocking the guard out too. But oops! Another guard hidden nearby sends a message about the intruders. Dylan smirks at the hidden guard, kind of impressed by their teamwork. He even mentions Jenny, who's really good at reading people. Then he takes out a vial of something called Viper. It sounds dangerous. He's getting ready to use it as he gets closer to a locked door. He furnished the Dyke laser cutter and slid open the door lock. He finds a scared security guard inside and knocks him out using nature's sleep. With a decisive determination to protect innocent civilians from the impending explosion, Dylan activated his magical marionette skill. He maneuvered the strings deftly, guiding the unconscious man to safety. As he descended a staircase, distant screams reached his ears, showcasing Dylan's efficient planning. His steps were calculated as he aimed to complete the task smoothly. Outside, a guard noticed Dylan's presence and let out a startled yell, but before he could raise an alarm, a flying duffel bag struck him, silencing him swiftly. Dylan advanced confidently, reaching the entrance of the factory. With a swift motion, he opened the shutter, revealing an emptiness that echoed through the space. Stepping inside, lasers crisscrossed his path, the challenge of it all exhilarating to him. All his adversaries had assembled voluntarily, a thrilling sight indeed. He expertly zapped past an array of troopers, the sound of his shots reverberating in the air. Launching himself forward again, he skillfully weaved through the hail of bullets, his movements almost dance-like. One trooper met his fist, crashing to the ground as Dylan stood before the fallen, his appetite for the fight only growing stronger. Meanwhile, Lennox had arrived at the temperature gas control area of the factory. With meticulous precision, he loosened the controls, setting the stage for a massive explosion. Content with his work, he needed nothing more than a simple ignition spell to set his plan in motion. He was grateful to the lady who sold vegetables. He had learned to do magic and mix different types together. He turned on a timer, setting it to explode in 5 minutes. Ready to go, a loud noise surprised him. The shutter popped out and a guy trying to be like Deadpool came in, followed by another guy who wanted to be like Killer Croc. Lennox came rushing in. He saw the two facing off and wondered who the crocodile-like guy was. As they talked, Croc said he got paid a huge amount, 10 billion cells. Dylan felt down when he heard that, but Croc offered him an easy death. Dylan said no and asked for his stuff back. Even though he tossed a spear at Croc, Dylan knew it wouldn't do much harm. Suddenly, Croc threw him against the wall. Croc laughed at the pain Dylan talked about. Then Dylan got an axe and charged at Croc. He got thrown against another wall. Lennox could clearly see that he was just trying to stall for time, but the clock was ticking down, showing only 2 minutes and 17 seconds left. He watched Dylan closely, convinced that the Croc had more power than both of them combined. He needed to figure out how to control something he couldn't escape. Dylan's energy had changed. He seemed to have lost that intense fierceness he once had as a kid. But then, unexpectedly, Dylan drew out a pair of sharp daggers, his eyes ablaze with a renewed, savage determination. They clashed with a clash that sent sparks flying. Dylan was quick, creating illusions that made it seem like he was in two places at once. As Croc caught on, he adjusted his strategy, attacking from behind. They moved with such speed that it was hard to keep up. Blows and punches exchanged in a blur of motion. Lennox's eyes widened as he saw Dylan's next move. A lightning bind, a surprise maneuver that shocked them both. Dylan cursed at Croc, calling him a low-budget Deadpool, and charged forward. Croc tried to strike back, but Dylan managed to escape by leaping away. In a swift motion, Croc's tail snaked out and grabbed Dylan by the neck, asking about a secret mage friend. But before he could do anything more, Dylan was propelled through the back wall, crashing outside. Croc decided to track down the mage, while Lennox entered through the front door. He was amazed by Croc's strength, but he knew he needed to focus on finding Dylan. He moved toward the source of Dylan's presence, finding him not far away. As he approached, he saw Dylan struggling, lost in thought. Lennox considered how to move Dylan. He concentrated, summoning strength and speed he had been avoiding due to his reliance on mana. He lifted Dylan and began to drag him away from the factory that was about to explode. Meanwhile, Croc was searching inside the factory, seeking the elusive mage. Suddenly, Croc's unease turned into realization as the ignition timer reached its limit, resulting in a massive explosion that shook the area. Even though they were protected by a barrier, the explosion's impact was painful. Dylan, shaken but alive, used another vial of something called Viper. He asked Dylan if it was some kind of physical booster, warning him about its dangerous side effects. With the request fulfilled, Dylan praised Dylan's superhuman abilities. He then offered to leave quickly if Lennox wanted to avoid dying in the ongoing chaos. Dylan's voice was filled with certainty as he asked if Lennox doubted Croc's survival. He even joked about Croc training alone in the mountains. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the rubble. Croc and Achilles from Pandemonium. The voice was vengeful and menacing, promising to kill them. Crocken was a former war mercenary turned executive for Pandemonium, a notorious organization of dangerous outlaws. The wall behind bust open, and Croken emerged, surrounded by blazing flames. Dylan's heart raced, and fear gripped him. He thought about running, but before he could take a step, Crocken charged towards the flames. Dylan's feet felt glued to the ground as he watched in terror. Crocken sliced through the flames, injuring 2 others in the process. Crocken stopped and bared his sharp claws, locking eyes with his targets. He asked if the skinny lad before him was the lightning mage. Lennox knew there was no escape. Dylan was scared, but safe. Lennox understood that he had to end this fight quickly. Dragging it out would only tire him out. As Crocken approached, Lennox activated his magic, creating gravitational binds that emerged like dark leashes. Crocken was immobilized, but he challenged the bind's strength. Some tore away, and Crocken taunted the spell. Lennox didn't back down and bound Crocken's snout shut, but it wasn't enough. Lennox needed to use the rest of his mana. Crocken charged forward, breaking through the gravitational bonds. Lennox prepared for the next move. Crocken's attack was fierce, but Lennox unleashed a powerful spell called Frost Wave. The beast froze in a capsule of frost, struggling against the magic's hold. Dylan shivered as he saw the massive cold taking over the scene. Escape seemed possible now, but the frozen cage began to crack. Lennox realized they needed a plan before Crocken broke free. His mana was nearly depleted. He remembered the gun he had scavenged before, a weapon that required minimal mana. With his vast experience, he aimed the gun, using trajectory guidance, penetration reinforcement, and projectile acceleration. The gun wouldn't hold much mana, but it didn't matter. The ice cracked, revealing Crocken's face. Lennox fired the gun, aiming for the exposed creature. The shot echoed, and time seemed to slow as the bullet sped toward its target. The moment hung in the air, frozen like the ice around them, and then impact. As the bullet hit home, the surrounding ice shattered, and Crocken flew backwards. Dylan complimented his aim as he struggled for breath amidst the subsiding smoke. Crocken stood impressed at the effort, but shockingly enough, he had caught it using his eyelid as Lennox remarked at the monstrosity. Crocken cackled at the praise since it hurt him quite profusely. The 2 cowered in fright with no mana left. He furnished the laser blade, and the enraged Crocken retrieved his offer to kill them painlessly. As Lennox wondered if it was the end for them, and the strike exploded the area, he sprawled, astonished he was still alive. Crocken's brutal strike had been intercepted by someone. He wondered who it was. Crocken glared at the government's hunting dog, Evelyn, who stared back at him coldly. Viper from Valorant has arrived, relaying how Crocken had now crossed the line. She pushed him away with the spear and questioned his motives to destroy the factory. As he watched in utter confusion, she further inquired if Pandemonium planned on wrecking the district. Crocken pledged his innocence and denoted that the factory was destroyed by the 2 he was fighting. As Dylan denied the charges and Evelyn agreed, she explained how impossible it was for masked hooligans like Dylan to orchestrate such plans. Although unfair, the blame was reasonable considering his strength. Surrendering to plea any further, Evelyn questioned as he took his leave, since his contract did not provide for him to fight the government. Witnessing the monster flee reflected how strong the lady was. While they thanked her, she unveiled the mask while replying, and he watched in astonishment, since it was the lady from the vegetable stall. As he rose, she queried his identity, since he seemed familiar. He declined any chances, she agreed, since his mana pattern was unfamiliar. He recalled their previous encounter, but fortunately, he had now altered his mana pattern. She advised him to keep away from any further interactions with Pandemonium, and took off with a leap. As they watched, Dylan complimented him on his luck, but he was pissed since he had delayed their exit, forcing him to fight Crocken. When Dylan surrendered 15 million, selling his share, he felt a sudden sense of loss. Dylan reminded him to avoid drinking the toxic potions and build a muscular, strong core like his. After a week, he puked and shivered in pain and exhaustion. He had slept for 4 straight days, confused if it was due to his mana addiction or Viper dosages. Determined to change his weak physique, he decided to consume proper meals over canned food and obtain better medicine, but he had to foremost collect his pay. Jenny queried his 10-day-long absence as he justified, saying he was busy. Although it was dire, he had no reason to reveal his weakness now. When he inquired about Dylan, she reported of him to have already collected his share the same day. She had charged the transfer fees on Dylan's share, and considering Varda's bonus, he now had 60 million cells in 61 million cell bills, which were only created and used by commercial higher-ups. When she praised him for having survived against the old crocodile, he reported to have been saved by an unknown lady. He asks her if she knows about a person named Evelyn. She tells him that Evelyn is a government agent who works for a big government-funded group. When he asks more about something called Pandemonium, she explains that they're like important people among the outlaws and bad guys. They only let famous members join, so there isn't much info about them except for names like Crocken. encounters with them would be super dangerous, and situations like his surviving would be like a miracle. Even though he was almost dying, Dylan staying calm made sense now. She hands him a piece of paper with the identity info he wanted. She also tells him to get a bank account and a phone. He agrees and adds another request. He heads to a place called Down Alley in Balkan. Inside, he goes to someone sitting down. Lennox says he's come because Jenny sent him. First thing, he asks for payment. He shows a bill for 1,000,000 sel, which is a really rare type of money, even rarer than what banks use. Since he's a big customer for Jenny, he doesn't have to share his home info. Instead, he's faking the data so it looks real. But if someone looks closely, they'd know it's fake. He's not sure what to do because bribing the boss would cost 400 million, which is a lot. Next, he goes to an underground place. He brings back a dead person's ID back to life. He changes the name from Lennox and pretends to be Evan. He needs a fake name that he can throw away later. He even changes his face using magic. But it's tough, and he has to deal with tricky situations. The man helps him quickly make a whole fake identity. After going back and forth, he finally feels like he's part of things. He calls Jenny and tells her he finished the tasks she gave him. Even though she said to only call her about work, he's the first one to take over. It takes a month for him to get a cell phone. She tells him to find a daytime job so that getting money won't seem strange. He decides to work with Jenny until he understands the city better. He's good at what he does, so he gets rewards that he can keep private. She's nice, but he can't fully trust her yet. He's pretty sure she found out about his ice magic from Dylan. It's weird how she avoids talking about it. The last favour he asked for was about something called Viper's Purchase. She knows about it. He was using cheaper stuff, but it's bad for his health. She tells him to wait for an address in the 30s districts. He's never been there before, so he'll see the differences. It has lots of things like amusement parks and big ports. She had asked him to visit an area in District 31 without asking about anything else, making it uncertain if she was hiding his secrets or planning to backstab or work him while keeping his secrets. Until the two revealed all their cards, it was impossible for him to decide, but he wasn't about to sit around doing nothing. He arrived in a huge botanical establishment and altered his face to vanish since it was Jenny's connection. He walked into the garden full of people and plants, almost like a huge jungle, looking at the myriad exhibits. He was astonished that such a place existed. He turned towards the place Jenny had mentioned and entered the garden's gift shop. He moved towards a staff-only door and entered through. As he descended, he came across a doorway to his left, smelling of viper. He treaded towards it and opened the door, finding himself amidst the huge expanse of smoke. Inside lay a laboratory full of plants and potions. As the receptionist inquired about his identity, he replied saying he was introduced by Jenny of the alcohol store in the 49th district, but unfortunately he had never consented for her to make such introductions. Quickly enough, though, he changed his story, stating he wasn't rich enough to deceive his customers. He asked about his interests in his apparent orchard. After glancing at the weird plants, Lennox instead asked why an orchard was present inside a botanical garden. In reply, the man questioned if he knew of the plant beside him. It was the aeonium, which increased energy, physical activation, and stamina. Since there were plenty of such plants in the garden above, he had no reason to purchase them elsewhere. Lennox inquired about medicines like the viper he presented. Looking at the button-activated file, he plucked open the lid and tasted the liquid. After waiting a while, he spat it out, branding it as super cheap, and inquired if it barely even worked. When Lennox stated that it helped with his mana, the old man gazed at the mage before him. It was very odd since Viper boosted physical strength during a fight, and definitely not mana. If with a cheap one, although there were rumours of rapid effects when used by a high-class mage, they were uncertain, and he was far too young to be one. Finally, he understood his need for a better alternative, and as he explained that an incompetent vial would cause severe side effects, over providing the least. Lennox requested an expensive variant as such, and he asked about his price range. When he placed 2,000,000 cells on the counter, the old man's eyes lit up. At the bar, while Jenny lay pondering if Van hadn't noticed Dylan taking notice of his ice magic, her grandfather spoke of how mages used to overthink the smallest things. She stood up in shock of his elemental prowess and wondered why he had hidden it. When he asked if she was envious, she reasoned how skeptically understanding Van was, but he asked her to avoid rushing and treat him well. When he suggested offering him some gang or mercenary work, she opted for mercenary jobs, since he had experience working alongside a mercenary like Dylan. Even the mercenaries would welcome Mage amongst their networks. He reminds her that although he was helping her on a guy named Kaiser's requests, she was too impatient. She raises her hand in silent agreement, and he sulks in a corner. The receptionist packed him a case of Cash Aid C-107, which offered 6 hours worth of physical reinforcement in mana and stamina, alongside possibilities of headache, spasms, and vomiting blood for the price of 2 million cells. It offered the least drawbacks. Although the side effects could be negated, it required tremendous costs. Even the manual button was operated by Mana as he looks at the features, similar to another company known as Calvin and Cubs. The receptionist shouts in anger for comparing his masterpieces, which were all made of premium herbs, unlike the cheap imitations. He wishes him to visit again as he takes his leave. 2 letters of resignation letters sat before Dre Krimgar, captain of the Krimgar mercenary group. His comrade way on sight since he had asked him to ease up on them. He punched the table and screamed of how he had cared for the mages throughout the quarter. Kithel concluded of how strenuous the job was for the nerds. Kithel turns away as Dre asked her to recruit a mage. The phone before him vibrated, and he was soon speaking to Jenny, who asked if they needed a mage. As he requests for 2 mages, Jenna notified that she had only 1 to present, and he trooped in disappointment, but she guarantees the 1 to be equivalent to 2. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.